What I have seen so far is all of us in the nonprofit sector, nonprofits, getting better at telling stories. I love that we're helping people visualize the work that we're doing. So I get super excited when I see a nonprofit that has stopped sharing what they do, what they do, what they do. And now they transition into why we do it, why we do it. That is really exciting to see because studies have really helped us understand the power of storytelling, but it also has helped us understand that when we help people understand and see and visualize, feel and sense the work that we do, then they become more generous, then they get more connected to the work that we do.
I'm Adriana Dakin, host of the Imagine podcast. Welcome, everyone. We connect impact leaders to the strategic practices and platforms that power their growth. I'm also co-facilitator of the Imagine Pod Impact Incubator. We're helping each organization that's participating create a fundraising campaign. It's a really critical time with 30% of all made at this time of year. But it's also important to be cultivating joy with each other, in ourselves, and our communities in the process. Now I'll do a quick introduction to Angelica and then invite her to introduce herself, and we'll get started with our conversation. Angelica Suarez hails from Colombia in South America and currently lives in Florida in the United States. She's on a mission to help organizations develop high-performance learning environments that really produce healthy, sustainable, effective rhythms in the workplace. And she loves collaborating with people like us. She is a certified coach in fundraising, strategic thinking, storytelling. She says it's all connected, which is so true. She brings in nonprofit boards even so that responsibilities and joys are spread out. She's also a psychological safety practitioner, which is great and so important when we're working in such diverse environments. Plus, she's an IDEO certified leader for business innovation. I met her recently last month through my old WorldLink Foundation colleague, Miles Smith, who also now works at Resilia. And there's so much more on her LinkedIn page. I recommend looking her up and following her. So, Angelica, I'd love to have you introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you. Once again, thank you so much for having me, Adriana. I'm extremely excited and I love to see all the faces here. So thank you so much. So yeah, Adriana, like you said, I was born in Colombia. I moved into the United States when I was 13 years old. I remember then I turned 18, 19. I started attending the University of Florida and a great professor invited me and said, why don't do something for your birthland? And I was just thinking, wow, I guess this is the invitation. Although I will be honest, at that moment, it felt like a challenge. It felt like this is not your time yet to go back and try to do something. But as I was reflecting and getting ready for today's session, I was just thinking about that was definitely an invitation that for many years has been written in my heart, my desire to do good, my desire to give back, my desire to love on the people. I keep having the images of kids that, just like me when I was growing up in Colombia, specifically in the city of Medellin, I remember always dreaming and thinking, I hope that one day I can go to university. I hope that one day I can have books so I can read it. I mean, there were so many dreams, right? And then when I hear this professor, all I could see was those images of peers with me when I was younger, thinking those kids deserve the same thing that I'm so blessed right now to have, which is an education. And so from there is where everything started. I was just 19 years old when I started Children Beyond Our Border with a group of friends, one of them now being my husband. I worked there for almost a decade. Then I transitioned from working in the international nonprofit sector to work in the local nonprofits. Then I moved into higher education, leading international department, and then faith-based organization. And Adriana, I must tell you something. Regardless of the mission, regardless of the work that I was doing, there was always something in common that I noticed that I was doing in every single organization for the past 2 decades, 20 years. And it was that I needed to constantly raise funds, I needed to constantly tell stories, and I needed to constantly strategize because resources were very limited. So now that I'm in this role where I get the incredible opportunity to meet what I call superhuman, superheroes in the world, making a difference, and I serve as a coach, all I can say is, let's get better at fundraising, let's get better storytelling and strategizing. So excited to be with you and for the opportunity to share a little bit about me.
You work with many leaders and organizations. What's a theme you're hearing right now in 2025 about what's helping people succeed?
what is helping them succeed? I think there's a little bit of everything. I think the number one is the belief in human kindness. I think that if we magnify too much the bad things and we do not magnify the goodness in us, then we lose hope and we lose a path and a vision. So I keep hearing that there is a belief in our human capacity to do great things. I also keep hearing the importance of us telling better stories. So I think a combination of better storytelling, seeing the good in us, and not only seeing the good of us, I think I have seen incredible good things happening in this sector, the fundraising sector, when it comes to individual giving, when it comes to corporate giving and foundations, that it should help us stay hopeful in the midst of things that can sound really bad. So again, magnifying the good so we don't get stuck in the bad.
That's great. One thing I enjoyed hearing from you about how people are succeeding in these times is you're hearing that people are not alone. What's happening is happening to so many, so they don't have to take it personally. And we're all stepping up to the occasion and we're listening to each other and creating places to gather like Resilia does and like Imagine Pod does to connect so importantly in this hub. For this year-end time, are there any themes emerging?
Yeah, so what I have seen so far is all of us in the nonprofit sector, nonprofits, getting better at telling stories. I love that we're helping people visualize the work that we're doing. So I get super excited when I see a nonprofit that has stopped sharing what they do, and now they transition into why we do it. That is really exciting to see because studies have really help us understand the power of storytelling, but it also has helped us understand that when we help people understand and see and visualize, feel and sense the work that we do, then they become more generous, then they get more connected to the work that we do. Especially as we go into the end of the year, the more we tap into storytelling, the better we will do. And I keep seeing that in the nonprofits that I get to work with. So I'm super happy to see that.
Excellent. In terms of top lessons learned or challenges in this time, people are grappling with so much right now. And I know that you've seen that, for example, many nonprofits don't have an individual donor program, but they're going into this time when it's so important to do it. What would you suggest around tackling these challenges?
We're going to get to talk about it a little bit later on when it comes to the presentation that I have created for us for today's session, but definitely stewardship and acknowledgement. Those two things we have to get better at. There is a big need to refine our acknowledgement process, how we acknowledge our donors, as well as how do we steward the donors? How do we maintain and engage in that conversation? When we do those things very well, the rest is just, I think, a piece of cake. Let's work on that.
Great. And I also love how you have a background in innovation. And you have this knowledge that the same strategy will not always work, and we always have to be ready and nimble to figure things out and think of things in a figure-outable kind of way.
Yes, the beauty of what we have learned with frameworks like the human-centered design process, which is the first step. Let's listen, right? And so when we are good listeners, we are able to innovate, to create new things that serve the people that we care the most for.
Awesome. Now, I have a question for you that hopefully doesn't make you feel too much on the spot. I would love to hear, and for others to hear, what's a new powerful decision that you would want for your own work as a coach in fundraising to see you to the next level of your work in the world?
Oh, Adriana, reflecting a lot of that, there are two things that as I keep thinking in my work as a fundraising coach. One of them is I have noticed a big gap in fundraising knowledge in Spanish. I don't see a lot of resources and information in this area. And so I have a big desire to make sure that I translate and I do as much as I can to provide these resources in Spanish as well, because we need them. We need them. I was just meeting with a few leaders that they keep saying, Angelica, no tenemos esto en español. We do not have this in Spanish. And so that really puts Hispanic nonprofits, especially those that are led by Spanish speakers, in a place where they feel very uncomfortable in the area of fundraising. And if anything, I will say a big takeaway is that fundraising is beautiful. It's beautiful when we understand what we do. I would love to do that. And the second thing that I really want to do, Adriana, when it comes to this role as a fundraising coach is really inspire us in the nonprofit sector to rest. to rest because our bodies need it, our people need it. And if we are strong and healthy, I think we can do it all.
So key to rest. And I think you also do the opposite of resting as a way to inspire yourself since you sign up for Spartan races. Why do you sign up for those races?
I think it was my 10th year working in the nonprofit sector. I became very, very sick. My body was fully burned out. And I didn't notice that, like, my body was saying, you need to work, you need to work. Look at all the urgencies and all the needs that need to be addressed. That's what my mind was telling my body. And my body was like, sorry, but you need to stop or you need to pause. And I did not pause. And on the contrary was that I keep working, but then my body said, boop, we're going to turn it off. And so for almost 3 years, Adriana, I had to pause it and take it very slowly. So when finally I was able to get my body back and my strength, said, all right, body, let's get stronger little by little and let's go do a Spartan race. So little by little, my body was getting healthier and stronger. It took me like 8 months to get prepared for a Spartan race, which is pretty much a obstacle course with like, I don't know, like almost 20 different obstacles. That's why I do Spartan races, to remind my body that we can do hard things. But more importantly, my body reminds my spirit and my mind of something very important, which is to say, what are your priorities? My faith, my family, and my health are the top 3 priorities in my life. I know that my calling is important, but if my body is healthy, I can do anything, right? And so that's why I do Spartan race, to remind my body that I can do hard things. And even though we have gone through many struggles, that even I have to shut it down for a little bit, we can do it. We can do it, but we have to honor our bodies the best way possible.
So good. We are before the time that we thought we would start your presentation, but let's go do it because you have so much good stuff in your presentation.
Great, great, great. So we start now with the deck and then we move on with the questions. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Yes, yeah, fabulous. Let's start with the trends. What are we seeing in the philanthropy sector? So many of you might be familiar with this. Some of us might be new, but this is the Giving USA report from 2025. This graph right here tells us a big story. It's telling us right now that 66% of giving is coming from individual donors. Again, 66%. And I have worked in the nonprofit sector for almost 2 decades, and I was spending a lot of my time going after corporations and foundations. And look at those stats. 7% is coming from corporation, and 19% is coming from foundations. I was for sure for many years going the wrong path. Not the right path, but I was spending way too much energy there without realizing that 66% is coming from individual donors. Now, you will see there that 8% is coming from bequests, but we know that bequests are coming from individuals. So if I was to add 8% from bequests and 66% from individual giving, we're talking almost about 74, 76%. We're talking about 70-something% more. With that in mind, with the importance of knowing that most of the giving is coming from individual giving, I want us to move on into something, which is the donor journey. When we think about fundraising, most of us, we always think about fundraising as this specific phase, this stage, the solicitation. And that's why we have so much fear many times, because we're always thinking, oh, the rejection, how about if they don't want me, right? But with this donor journey, what I really want us to be thinking about is that fundraising has way more stages than just asking. Here, I'm sharing with you a framework that consists of 6 different stages. If you were to Google search donor journey framework, you might find some frameworks with more steps, some with less, but for the sake of simplicity and the way I like to see it, I use the 6 different steps. So going very quickly about them, the first one is the identification. We know that there are so many people in the world, but not everyone aligns with our mission. So we want to identify donors that their values, their motivations, their desires are connected with the work that we are doing with our nonprofits. Then we move into the third phase, which is the cultivation. This is the moment where Sierra and I were sitting down to learn what is it about our mission that calls for attention. What are some of the dreams and desires that she wants? I've been with my husband for 21 years, and I can tell you, if he would have asked me to marry him the day I marry him, I will be like, you're weird. And I think that many times, all of us, we identify someone, we see Bailey and say, Bailey, do you want to give to this nonprofit? And we should not. We should really do the work of motivating, the cultivation. Many times when I think about my husband, I'm like, it's a dating moment where we're really getting to know each other. Is this a good fit for you? Is this a good fit for me? One time I had a donor, someone that we identified, that we were learning their motivations, and this person shared their passion for whales. Granted, I'm working with refugees and internally displaced people, so no correlation there. The first thing I did is that I don't necessarily work there, but I know an organization that loves and does incredible work when it comes to the protection of whales. That guy was so grateful, right? One, because I moved him to the right place. And then he was extremely generous with me, even though that was not a maintained donation. But all that to say, that cultivation and motivation really helped me to move into a place where I could guide them and I don't have to spend time asking for something that is not going to be sustainable. Now, within the donor journey, today I'm going to concentrate in two very specific places, the acknowledgement side and the stewardship side. I'm not going to share too many details now because we're going to move into it, but I'm going to tell you why. Why do I care so much about these two stages? Again, the acknowledgement and the stewardship. Look at this right now. This is the current state of donor retention. An average nonprofit is retaining 46% of their donors. 46%. I also work in the private sector, and if we only keep 46% of our clients, we will not be operating. We will not be in a good place, right? So this should really tell us 46% of donors, what is happening, right? Well, what is not happening? And so we're going to be talking more about that. Now, 23%, we only retain from first-time donors, 23%. Repeat donors, those that have given 60%. But look at this. Monthly donors, we see retention rates of 90%. If you guys want to learn more about this, highly recommend another second resource, the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. On a quarterly basis, they share reports of how donors are moving. This is one of those quick examples that I highly recommend as you think about your strategy for a stewardship, as you think about your strategy to gain new donors and so forth. So again, we look into the individual giving, how much is being given. We look into the donor journey, helping us understand when we identify them to the moment that we steward them. And again, the two areas where I see that this can be fixed, where these percentages can be fixed, is when we enhance our acknowledgement and our stewardship processes. When we work on those, I'm confident that even if we just get better by 10%, we will see a significant amount of funding coming back to our organizations. Now, I want to share with you some of the ways that I believe that how can we do that? How can we get better in acknowledgement and stewardship? There's this really cool book that I read many years ago called The Power of Moments. So pretty much this book talks about 4 elements that help us create moments that are memorable. 4 elements that define and create powerful moments that stay with us, stay in our minds and our hearts. So what I want us to do with our daughters is making powerful moments that they remember us, that they think of us, that they say, oh, that was one of my most beautiful memories working with Aimee in this nonprofit organization. So let's talk about those 4 elements. The first one is what they call the elevation moment, right? So pretty much in simple definition will be, it's all about breaking the script of the everyday. So every day we show up to work, there might be a day that you give a contribution, there might be a day that you start a job, but how do we make that different? They talk about how do you break the script of every day. So it's by breaking the expectations, by making a moment that is a surprise moment, by making something feel very special, something that could be just a pencil that I'm giving you. How about if that pencil says something that it makes it special, right? Here's a quick example for a donor. Instead of an automated email receipt, which everyone gives, right? Imagine your executive director personally making a call within the 24 hours just to say thank you. That's the elevation. That's an example of elevation. That's when you have broken the expected pattern of just getting an email and the donor will remember it. I remember one time I had a specific donor and they sent me this as a thank you note. This has nothing to do with the brand of the organization. They do not work with elephants at all. But they noticed that in the background of my screen, I have an elephant picture. And they keep asking me, what is the meaning of your elephant? And I was like, I love that there's a female elephant that's leading their path. They're just leading and protecting the whole little elephants. And so that means a lot to me as a kid that I had to protect and think about my siblings. So that elephant reminds me I can be big and powerful and take care of the ones that I love, right? And then they sent me this as a thank you. This really told me not necessarily just thank you, but it really said, I'm paying attention when we talk. I care about what you do. I care about what matters to you. They got it from Kenya and they said it back to me. And I thought this is one of the most precious moments. So that's elevation, a surprise moment that you were not expecting it. And that it shows you that they're listening to you. The insight moment. So this moment, and the simple definition, is those moments that change our understanding of ourselves or the world. An example will be those moments when we're aha moments, or when we understand the impact for the first time of that contribution. Those are the insight moments that we can create for donors. A quick example will be a donor gives $100, and most of the organizations will say something along the lines of, thank you for your generous donation. But how about if we change it to your $100 donation, Sierra, is providing 300 meals to families in crisis this month. It's giving more insight, more understanding. That's 75 families who ate dinner tonight because of you, Sierra. And so that's the kind of insight that we want to provide to our donors. Insight that helps them understand why their contribution matters. Again, you notice the trend. I'm staying within the acknowledgement side of the donor journey. Let's move into the third element that they mention in their book. Moment of pride. The definition is those moments that capture us at our best, right? So it's the recognition for an achievement, is the celebrating a milestone, is acknowledging character, not just results. Here's an example. When you tell a donor you have now given for 5 consecutive years, you're one of the only 47 people who have shown this level of commitment to our mission. That's pride, right? You're not just thanking them for the money, but you're celebrating who they are as a person. And we want to be able to create and instill in them that pride of, yes, I am providing and I'm doing something that really means something. Now, the last one, connection. So connections are moments that are shared with others that help us deepen those relationships. So we might be familiar with this. Those are those nice events that we host, those events that allow our opportunities for connection, that we share meaning, that help us see that we are valuable. When I think about events for nonprofits, I want us to be thinking constantly about 3 types of events. There's the cultivation type of events, the fundraising events, and then there's the stewardship type of events. And the stewardship is that opportunity for us to create connection, to get to know others, my peers that are donating to the same cause. All of us, we belong to that same place, right? Last year, we had a stewardship event, and I will be extremely honest. The fundraising in me was constantly cheating myself and saying, hey, we can use this opportunity to ask for money there. And then I remember me telling the executive director, remember, we're not going to ask money. And then 2 weeks passed, and then she's like, Afika, but I told you said not to ask. I'm like, yeah, we're not supposed to ask. So please make sure that you don't ask during stewardship events. The whole purpose of your stewardship events is to thank your donors, to create a connection. And I will tell you something really cool. When after we had the stewardship event, we did not make an ask, but we were able to gain 5 recurring donors without making an ask. In addition to that, we were able to get $10,000 again without even making an ask. Why? because all they were seeing is other people that were making a difference, their peers saying how good it felt for them to give to this cause, and they were being thanked. Now, I'm going to move into, I want us to imagine two donors, okay? And your organization. So donor A, they have given $1,000. So donor A receives an automated receipt. They will get a formal letter 2 weeks later, and then will receive a quarterly newsletter. Might be feel a little bit generic. And then we'll get the year-end approval asking for more. Now, think about donor B that is receiving a little bit of an automated receipt, very similar to donor A, but they're also getting a personal call within 48 hours. That's what we talk about, the elevation. They're also getting an impact story showing exactly where those $1,000 went, right? That's the insight kind of moment. They're also receiving a recognition at 6-month anniversary of their milestone standard rating prize, saying 6 months ago you donated and look at all the great things that you did. And then invitation to meet with other donors and program participants through your stewardship event. The great things happen. We're able to combine this. And for me, this book has been a great inspiration to really think about acknowledging the acknowledgement section as well as the stewardship side. I think about a bridge. Most organizations will leave powerful moments to chance. Let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's be intentional. We can design these moments. And when we do it, that's when things really stick. That's when people really remember. And remember that the whole purpose is for us to be memorable, for them to remember us and to be able to come back. And not only to come back, but to some extent become ambassadors of the work that we do for our nonprofits. So now I'm going to share a few more resources. So I share about how I have utilized such a powerful book that I highly recommend that either you have it as an audio book or you have it. It's a great, great book to get inspired. And how do we create moments that stay with us forever? And so now let's talk about a little bit more about the acknowledgement side. So when we are thinking about thanking our donors, I want to remind us of different ways to thank our donors. What I typically see is a nonprofit focused kind of example where we thank the donors in a way that highlights more the work of the nonprofit above anything. But I would love for us to also include in our thank you notes a donor-focused approach. So what is a donor-focused approach? A donor-focused approach encourages them for future giving. So I focus on how the donor is helping your nonprofit to achieve your goals. It uses you more than we. So instead of saying, us here with Children on Our Borders have been able to provide the scholarships, we will go more, thanks to you, Aimee, we have been able to provide our kids scholarships so they can go to the university. So it has more of a focus on you as the donor versus the nonprofit. It also highlights their contribution. It lets you see more the difference of the way of what they're doing. And it shows appreciation for each donor as an individual, not a nameless group. So those are ways that we can do donor-focused language when we are thanking our donors. We have created maybe 12 letters that can be sent to different. These are just templates, again, to obviously modify them to fit more your language. But we wanted to provide a few examples of donor language that really helps donors connect a little bit more with the work that we are doing as nonprofits, and that help them connect a little bit more with the impact that their contribution has with the nonprofits. Now, when it comes to acknowledgement, I wanted to bring that different approach, which is spending a little bit more time on using donor-focused language for our thank you letters. Now let's talk about stewardship. So what is stewardship? Stewardship is that opportunity for us to engage with our donors, to maintain that relationship. Going a little bit with the example that I talked about with my husband, again, 21 years. And if we would have never gone on a date after we got married, I don't know if we would be together. So think about that. Think about what do you do to maintain watering that plant so it stays alive. This is what stewardship is all about. It's about maintaining and creating that relationship through different ways, through different engagements. So we will share with you guys at the end of this session a stewardship calendar. So what it is a year plan for donor communication, appreciation, engagement, guided by your segmentation and capacity. So we believe that you should engage with your donors in a way that meets them where they are. So if they are first-time donors versus a major donor versus a recurring donor, the calendar that we're about to share with you will have all of those examples that you can implement within your organizations, as well as other type of events that you can host. Why does it matter? Because many touch points for any donor can really leave an impact and remind them of why it's important to get involved and get engaged with your organization. Now, things that you should consider when you are creating your stewardship calendar is to make sure that you include outreach or updates or communication. Let's make sure that we send birthday cards, that we keep them informed. One of the nonprofits that we were given, really cool, they did something where they did a donor survey and they asked me information about different family members. I added my husband's birthday, I added my children's birthday, and on their birthdays, my kids and my husband receive a thank you letter saying, thank you for being partnered with us in this way, right? So I thought that was really neat, really thinking outside of just that main donor, but it's a whole family that at the end is really contributing. Then obviously your stewardship events, extremely important to add into your calendar. This could be in-person opportunities to thank your donors. It can also be casual cookouts, barbecues, formal galas, whatever you want to be. Sometimes what I have done in the past is partner with a local coffee shop and ask them, hey, will you be okay if I host an event here to thank our donors for the work that they have done with us, with our nonprofit? And it has been great partnerships because those donors that didn't know about that business, now they know it. And at the same time, it's very inexpensive to be able to partner with businesses to host stewardship events. I always let the business know that I'm not necessarily there to raise funds. I'm there to thank the donors. So we kind of negotiate expenses. But stewardship events, again, they do not have to be expensive. You can also have an online stewardship event. I have attended those, I have organized those, and they're great. But as a good Latina, nothing will replace a good hug. I will say I am more of a big fan of the in-person events just for that hug that I'm going to get from that person. Now, you can also have recognition programs. Those will be public acknowledgements like newsletters or social posts that you might share, obviously with the permission of the donor if they feel comfortable with that. And then the stewardship calendar should also have a set and track donor engagement goals to stay focused and assess the progress of your stewardship events. Like I said, we're going to be sharing this calendar. It looks a little bit like this, where you will see what to do in every single month. Adriana will be sharing it with you. And the last thing we have when it comes to stewardship, one thing that I have found extremely helpful is the stewardship metrics that helps me know based on what kind of action should I do with certain contribution. I have seen different stewardship metrics, so I have seen it more instead of having a number, which I'm not a big fan of this, so I apologize for that, but I will do it more like a new donor. What are they going to get? A major gift donor, a lapsed donor, a recurring donor. So depending on who they are within the organization, I will decide what kind of action our nonprofit is going to do when it comes to stewardships. So I really recommend that you create one. Next steps. Here are a few things that I highly recommend that we do. So one of them is implement the 48-hour thank you this week. So it can be a 48-hour call that is done by any of your staff member, any one of your board members, any one of your volunteers, that they can call and say thank you to the new donor. I also want you to be thinking about customizing 2 to 3 templates on how to make sure that we have donor language on our thank you letters. I also want you to be thinking about 2 stewardship goals that you're going to have with your donors, as well as I want you to be making thank you calls to your top 10 donors or any donor that you have. Again, remember about that graph where we talked about retention rates being low? remember that stewardship and acknowledgement is what really takes care of that area. And it's way more expensive to gain a new donor than to retain one. So knowing that retention rates are low, knowing the steps that we can take, and knowing that it's way more effective, especially financially more effective, when we take care of stewardship and acknowledgement. So make sure that you prioritize that for your organization. And so this concludes this little brief, quick presentation. I want to thank you with all my heart. Please connect with me via LinkedIn. I would love to see you around. And you can also visit resilia.com for more tools that we offer there for free. And very key, remember, donors don't leave because they stop caring. No, they do not do that. They most likely leave because they stop feeling that they matter. So let's make sure that we remind them that they matter a lot to us. And our stewardship and acknowledgement is what is going to remind them of that. So make every moment count. Thank you again.
So now we are exactly on time for the Q&A with you all. And you can share a question or a top takeaway. So we start with Ann Rush.
Ann Rush, status code 4. Donor stewardship is something that I've been really struggling with. When you're a small nonprofit, the mission always comes first. But with the donor stewardship, I have actually 2 questions. Where would you recommend finding new donors? Like, what activities can nonprofits do to reach donors? And then with that donor stewardship on a limited budget, one of the most fundamental things, if we have a budget that's under 200,000, what would be the most fundamental thing for us to do to maintain those donors in a stewardship program?
Fantastic. Great. Thank you, Anne, for your question. So when I think about your first question, I'm thinking about the first phase of the donor journey. So it's more about the identification, not necessarily yet the acknowledgement and the stewardship. When I think about identifying new donors, there are a few things that I keep in mind. So the first one is internally, who is in our network, right? Who is in the network? Our board of directors, our volunteers, our staff. Who are they and who can they connect us with? There's a really cool scientist. His last name is Dr. Dunbar. And he talks about how we can memorize and remember 150 people, 150 connections. So I always do this exercise with the board of directors, with the staff, and with the volunteers. So I start just right there and I say, all right, I'm going to give you 1 minute and I want you to write down as many people as you think you know. And they write the names, right? One time I did this exercise and then they told me, well, one of the many times I've done it, one of them said, I wrote 40 people. I'm like, 40 people in 60 minutes. I'm like, oh, that's fabulous. And then the next thing I did, and was to ask them, now I want you to make a circle for those people that connect with your organization. And this organization specifically works in Haiti, and they provide water and microloans to communities, right? And so I wanted to highlight all the things that the values and mission of your organization, the motivations, what can possibly frustrate the donor that aligns with the frustrations of the organization, right? So I will say, I asked them, right, circle everyone that cares about clean water, because that's one of the things that this nonprofit works. Now, within that same list, create a little heart to those that align specifically with your mission. So that list went from 40-something to now we're in 20. I'm like, phenomenal. And then I did a few other things. Later on, they all realized, wow, I have 15 potential people that I can definitely invite to connect to our nonprofit. And I will say, don't tell them what you're doing right away, okay? Because if you were to ask volunteers, board members, and ask, can you name 3 people that we can connect with into our nonprofit? What has happened 99% of the times with me is that they say, I don't know anybody. And I'm like, oh, you don't? Okay, let me do this. And so that's the exercise I will do. I will start internally, then I will move into using practices like the LAI. So linkage, ability, and interest. Is always looking into people that have a linkage with our organization, that have the ability, and by ability that means they have the resources to give, and that they have a similar interest to our organization. There are a few more things that I do, but for the sake of time, I will say those 2 practices. So having them brainstorm with your internal, then utilizing the LAI, linkage, ability, and interest, to help them understand a little bit more the given. I hope we understand and capture that stewardship can be as simple as just writing a thank you letter. It is really allocating 1 hour a week. I will make it as simple as this, like asking your board of directors, hey, here's some thank you letters, here's some birthday cards, here are some milestones, creating that calendar of milestones that you want to celebrate, and asking your volunteers for 1 hour a month, 1 hour a month, where they only write a certain amount of thank you letters, certain amount of birthday cards, certain amount of milestone celebration points with your donors. And I would just start as simple as that. What I notice is that we don't even have that. What I notice is that we don't even put our executive director to do everything. And I find that a little bit unfair because our executive directors have so much to do in other areas, operation, fundraising, but utilizing your board of directors or even your volunteers, your most faithful volunteers that like to do those things. I will start there with something like that. That will be one. But the other one will be dream with your board of directors, dream with your staff, dream with your volunteers, and create 3 to 5 stewardship activities. It can be the stewardship report that you're going to send. It could be a stewardship event that you're going to host at a certain time of the year, either online or in person. It could be the different milestones that you're going to celebrate for those donors. So think about 3 to 5 things that you're intentionally thinking about how can we steward those donors and delegating among not just staff. I'm working in a nonprofit where for many years I was the solo paid person working. I know the pain. But for me, I even created something called the VIP, Volunteer and Internship Program. I wanted to make sure that we had a VIP program to help us run those kind of things because I knew the power of stewardship, and I knew that if I didn't have a stewardship, I was going to be at that 43%. And I cannot be in a 43% retention rate when it costs me more to gain one new donor than to retain. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Aimee, you had a good question. You said, we just had our big fundraiser in September. How do I not feel bad about asking for more money so soon after?
Hi, I'm Aimee Swearingen. I am co-president of our board for Seabiscuit Therapeutic Writing Center, and we provide therapeutic horsemanship services for children and adults with disabilities and teach them the skill of horsemanship to help with daily life skills. We have our fundraiser Labor Day weekend, and it's our big event of the year. We were a little low this year, so I'm thinking we need to do something else for spring, and the year-end ask is coming up, and we live in a small community that is very generous. There are 660 nonprofits in our county, and we're all going for the same money from the same people. So it's very hard for me to feel like I can ask, and it's always the same people who do the giving at our fundraiser. So how do I get over that hesitancy of not wanting to ask, but we need more financial support than we have? How do I change that mindset or come up with other ways to feel like it's okay to reach out to our folks?
Thank you, Aimee, for your question. Thank you, Aimee, for what you do, and the same to you. And thank you so much for the work that you do. Now, when it comes to asks, you're absolutely right and being very careful because there's such thing as donor fatigue. So that is a very healthy to think and be very mindful of your donors. How can I make sure that I don't cause fatigue? I will also say that if you had an event, my recommendation is look into segmentation of donors, right? So I will segment your donors. And we don't do this enough in the nonprofit sector. We just send the same letter to everybody. I have fallen into that temptation of like, I don't have enough time. I'm just going to send the same ask for everyone. My early years as a fundraiser, what a big mistake. And then what I learned is the importance of constantly segmenting my donors, my new donors, my recurrent donors, my major donors. There's the lapsed donors that I need to reconnect with, right? And so when I'm thinking about your event, I'm thinking about who attended that event. Was everyone present? I wonder for your donor data list if there was some groups that were not necessarily present, that we can create a special call to invite them to partner with us, right? So we're not tapping to the same specific donors that just gave to your organization. So I will say that will be an approach. Reach out to those that not necessarily were part of your event. See the segmentation, invite them to give depending on where they land in regards to how much money they're also given. I will never write a letter to a major donor to say, do you know that $25 will help our kids have books? I will not do that because I know that my major donor gave $5,000. So I'm going to put a little bit, right? So be mindful of how we do the ask for each of our donors. And I think the next thing I will do, Aimee, and this one will be a little bit tough, what I'm going to recommend here, but engaging those donors that attended that event, that gave to your event in a way that is not asking for funding. Inviting them to that special place where you are, they can see the work that you do. So as an invitation, Jen, come and join us. See the work that we do with the kids. We just wanted to invite you and see the impact of your work without you even asking. The fact that Jen came, Jen saw your work, that's going to be like, this is so neat. And that's what I gave money for in my past event. And you'll be like, yes, that's exactly what you're giving. And we just want to say thank you. So I will spend a little bit more time in that, Aimee, in that stewardship by inviting them to those spaces, because that is going to alleviate and heal the fatigueness that sometimes donors can feel. I did an assessment of my time as executive director. I was working with a coach and he asked me to track 4 weeks of my time. And then we learned that 80% of my time I was spending it in programming. I was not spending enough time fundraising. And then I will be honest, 10% I was writing grants, 80% was doing, and I had someone else writing grants. So I thought that was okay. And then I would spend 10% fundraising. And I always remember this. This was like maybe 16 years ago. He said, do you want your organization to exist within the next year? And I was like, yes. He's like, well, you should spend a little bit more time in fundraising. And when I say fundraising, is inviting Jen to have coffee with you, build that relationship. Individual giving is all about relationship-based fundraising. So we need to spend the time and building those relationships. Is it time consuming? 1,000%. It is very time consuming. But 66% that I share with you guys on the graph from giving is because those people are building those relationships, because it's a personal thing to me now, because I know personally the work that they're doing, because I know the pains that they're going through as a donor. And it starts with that. Can we have a follow-up coffee? Can we have a coffee? I want to hear how you do it. Think about, I'm going to get to know them. I'm going to get to really connect with them. And I'm going to really understand their motivations and their desires to give to our organization. And I'm going to do my best to constantly align those values and those dreams for a better world and those things that frustrate them. I hate human trafficking. Fabulous. Guess what? Our organization fights human trafficking, right? And so it's help them then connect to those things. But those little coffee shops, ese cafecito is going to make a difference.
I loved my cafecito with you. It sounds so inviting. Keturah. Keturah is an amazing leader of her organization doing girls' education in northern Nigeria, and so beautifully connected internationally. And love to have you introduce yourself and say a little bit too about your fundraising culture, so Angelica knows the lay of the land there.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Keturah Shama. I'm from Nigeria. Nigeria is a country that has the highest number of dropout children, over 10 million children out of school. This is a global statistics by World Bank, UNICEF, and Bureau of Statistics. And that's over 60% are girls. Among that 60 are from the northern Nigeria where I came from, but so many experience from my own personal experience. I started Girls Education Mission International to handle that situation. Question here is, I'm from a different context. The platform I am raising funding, I use Global Giving. And the challenge we have is we are not allowed to send email directly to our donors. It has to be automated email. So based on our own tracking, we discovered that most of these donors, they don't even check the mails. the headline of the email don't actually carry our name or our stories. And their law and policy is that we should not send direct email for data privacy. So I don't actually understand how we can be able to succeed with invitation that we cannot actually reach the donors. So we have to rely on international donors outside Nigeria. And this one is very difficult for me to make a call.
So definitely you're right, Keturah. There is a very different context, and all the data that I share with you is based on the data and the numbers from the United States. I just got a book called the Palgrave Handbook of Global Philanthropy, and I was in shock that there was not enough information about Africa, the African continent, when it comes to philanthropy. So I do believe that there is an opportunity, and I wish that we can have a little bit more studies and understanding of what happens and how we can connect with donors. But again, an interesting question, something I have to answer, think about more carefully, because I'm thinking now more than answering, I think that we're going to be moving into a brainstorming session of thinking, how else can we connect? If this data you're not able to have access, what else can you do? So definitely something for us to brainstorm and think, another opportunity for sure. Please connect with me LinkedIn. We'll be happy to follow up with conversation and figure out something, okay?
And Sierra, let's slide you in for a quick intro and conversation before we end.
Hello, I'm Sierra Van Zandt. I'm the Executive Director for Living Classroom. We do garden-based education to inspire the next generation. I'm working on a lot of follow-up from the event we had a couple weeks ago that was really successful, and thinking about how to properly thank our donors and continue that stewardship element. And something I've been thinking about is like the timeline of our year. We did this event in the fall. We are still planning to do our end of year campaign from Thanksgiving through the end of December. And then in the spring, we do a community event. And then late spring, summer, we do that stewardship appreciation only event. How can I engage our donors so that I'm not asking in the fall and then in the winter, but just in this listening session, I was thinking maybe I can do that piece that you said of invite them to learn about our organization more and be a part of it. And so I think as I'm writing these handwritten thank you notes, I want to include an invitation to come tour our gardens. I'm hoping then our end of year campaign will still be well received, because there's been another type of touch point in between. Hopefully I'm getting the right idea out of it, but if you have another suggestion, that's welcome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for the work that you do. I really appreciate it. I would say that I always think about my summer as my time to recalibrate my relationships with my donors, because I know the end of the year is there come. So I use my summer as that opportunity to connect with them and have I live in Gainesville where we have multiple springs. So it's like, let's go into the springs. It's just very social. And so stewardship is about that too, Sierra. It's about socially connecting. Stewardship does not allow us to be transactional at all. It's not permitted. It's prohibited. So it's like, how can we make sure that we engage with them in a way that is very human, that it feels warm, that we can connect? I always think about giving in the winter and in the fall. I think about the summer and the other months as my little bit of a fall, and summer as my little breaks. And so not little breaks, but planning and stewardship. I like to schedule 10 cafecitos a month. I think about this number. I'm going to meet with 10 people to have cafecitos, very intentional, hear how they're doing. And Sierra, there is a situation, and this person told me, this donor said, Angelica, I'm going through cancer. And I'm like, that's heavy. And so being able to be with that person, again, in this very vulnerable, and me going through something very similar, thinking, I know what it feels to be in their shoes. How can it be a friend? How can it be a human? And that person came back and I'm not saying do this for the sake of getting more. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying when you really create that human connection, and to that level, you will hear things from your donors that they're so important to remind us of the importance of humanity, and then to allow us to be able to serve them as well. Because again, we receive, but if we can serve at some point, this person told me that, I definitely took on me and say, let me make sure I constantly pay attention to this person and be there for this person and show them that I'm here for them during such a hardship time. So the intentionality of those cafecitos, of those 10 lunches a month, allow me to build strong relationships that help me understand where they are, that also help me know when is it the right time to ask, because we also need to know when is the right time to ask. But it's those cafecitos that tell you when is the right time. And I knew that it was not the time for this specific donor was not going to come anytime soon because they were going through hardship. And so I get that question asked to a lot. When is the right time? Do you have a relationship with them? And if you don't, then let me tell you, build on that relationship, because that relationship will determine a lot the right time. So plug in those cafecitos with your donors and add that into your summers. Thank you, Sierra.
As a last question for you, how can people, besides LinkedIn, how can people reach out to you and learn more about what you're doing and the causes that you care about? Or, what can be a next step for them?
And next step that I recommend for everyone is one of those 3 things. Create your calendar, your stewardship calendar. Brainstorm with your team. What are some of the stewardship events, activities that you want to do? Number 2, I will say, make sure that you coordinate who is going to call who, when, for birthdays, milestones of the donor. And then the third thing is making sure that we do a very good job and looking here to, again, the calls, the calendar, and the templates, customizing your thank you letters. Please don't only do nonprofit focused language, but make sure that you incorporate donor focused language so then they can see the impact of their contributions.
Thank you. If people want to learn about Resilia, where should they look?
Yes, Resilia.com. That's simple. Please visit us at Resilia.com. And then there's a really great opportunity for you guys to get access to some of our free resources through the site.
And so much gratitude for you all and for Angelica. You've shared so much. And this has been amazing. I hope to get to know everybody better, and good luck to everyone in this critical season. Thank you.
Thank you.